This section is finished, waste filled and backfilled. The pay line, however, is right here. As you can see, not much remains. And my buddy, that is a really nice feeling. $15 million in the Yukon. It's more than just a figure. It's either survive or perish. On Dominion Creek, Parker Schnabel staked everything. It wasn't mining, it was an uphill battle. The team wasn't simply shocked at the final weigh-in either. Everything altered as a result. The structure of a gamble that is all or nothing. You must go back in time to fully comprehend this season's narrative. The problem is that Parker Schnabel wasn't motivated by avarice. When he placed this enormous wager, he had no choice but to make it. His business at Scribner Creek, a dependable cash cow that generated millions of dollars in gold, had been the Klondike's envy for years. However, no claim endures forever. The pay was becoming less steady, and the ground was becoming thin. Every successful young person ultimately finds themselves at a crossroads, and Parker was no exception. Reduce the scale of the operation, fire the devoted team members who have grown to be like family, or make a huge risk. Backing down was not an option for a man whose unrelenting forward motion defined him. That was Dominion Creek. That leap. What's actually happening with this specific piece of property is that it's both a nightmare and a dream, which is pretty weird. You have a lot more trash in here than we anticipated, don't you? There's definitely at least 5 feet of rubbish in here, I wager, because I've encountered around 8 feet of that large, coarse rock in several places down here, correct? Indeed. I have no idea how long it will take you. You have a large amount of gravel. Miners have known it contains a fortune in gold for decades. However, that wealth is hidden behind 40 feet of overburden, or dense frozen earth. You have to move millions and millions of tons of this useless sludge in order to reach the pay soil. It's a financial and engineering problem that has previously consumed and expelled seasoned miners. Fortunes were said to exist there, but they were almost never discovered. The $15 million figure itself is what raises the most concerns. Behind the scenes, that number wasn't merely a hunch. The calculation was harsh and chilly. The land itself has a price tag of several $1 million. It was the purchase of a fleet of the largest, most potent pieces of equipment he had ever owned. It was the exorbitant expense of gasoline, since his equipment consumed hundreds of gallons of diesel each day. Additionally, it was the salary for a sizable, highly qualified staff that could manage the entire business around the clock. The strain was unbearable. It was more than just a season for mining. Every minute of the high-stakes commercial endeavor cost a fortune, and Parker's youthful shoulders bore the full weight of it. The level of loyalty Parker engenders will astound you, and that loyalty was put to the ultimate test this season. Without its crew, a mine would be nothing, and the human engine powering the entire enormous machine was Parker's squad. These were the people who had to endure the grueling 12-hour hours in the bone-chilling Yukon cold and the unrelenting mud. Since everyone has a position here for next year, I sincerely hope that everyone wishes to return. From the rock truck drivers and mechanics who kept the iron heart of the enterprise running smoothly to Tyson, the dependable and seasoned foreman who turned Parker's ambitious plans into reality on the ground. Everybody was stretched to the breaking point. The relationship between Parker and his team was encapsulated in a single moment from this season. In addition to having a pregnant wife back home, Mitch, one of Parker's most devoted and diligent crew members, was dealing with the heartbreaking reality of missing his daughter's birthday. It was a pivotal moment in the work. It was the last push. It made sense that all hands had to be on deck. However, Parker noticed something more significant than gold ounces. What's actually happening behind the scenes at that precise moment provides insight into Parker's leadership style. He approached a weary, greasy Mitch and advised him to leave for home, telling him he didn't ask. Parker dismissed Mitch's surprise by saying, "You have a pregnant wife and a daughter's birthday to get home to, don't you? Get out of here." In the long run, it was an investment in something far more valuable than gold, but in the short term, it made everyone else's job tougher. Devotion. It made it very evident to the whole team that their employer considered them more than just cogs in a machine. Even though they were under pressure to spend $15 million, that one act of kindness inspired a level of commitment that no salary could ever match. The creature that devoured the compensation. Parker needed an equal weapon to defeat a claim as strong as Dominion Creek. He discovered it in his enormous new wash facility, rock sand. The operation's true center was this machine. Conveyor belts, vibrating screens, and a tall steel beast. It needs a name, I see. It requires a name. I genuinely believe that the old Goldie box is a good fit for it. I simply feel that I won't like saying that in a year. I'm not sure. For a rock for a wash plant, I do prefer rock sand, correct? Because, it's like rock and sand. It was a ravenous beast created with the sole intent of consuming mountains of pay dirt and extracting the small, priceless gold flakes from the useless rock. You see, the process is a controlled chaos symphony behind the scenes. The enormous excavators were the first to arrive, their enormous buckets tearing at the pay dirt layer 40 feet below the surface. Tons of this debris were then thrown into the beds of rock trucks and made their way through the cut's hazardous muddy roadways to the base of Roxanne. High-press water cannons were used there to blast the pay soil, turning the firm, packed earth into a muddy slurry that flowed. The problem is that this is when the mechanics and magic really come together. Pumped up onto a huge vibrating shaker deck was the slurry. As it violently sorted the material, the entire structure shook with a loud noise. Over the season, a garbage pile that had grown into a small mountain was formed by the bouncing off of rocks larger than a fist. Through the screens, the smaller, gold-bearing sand and gravel tumbled into a network of lengthy passageways, known as cell boxes. Miner's moss, a type of rubber carpet, is used as a specific matting to line these boxes. Gold is quite heavy, so when the slurry swept over these mats, the lighter sand and gravel were washed right out the other end. But the microscopic gold particles would sink and become trapped in the moss. For months, sand and stones. It roared endlessly. It sounds like their lives' continuous soundtrack. However, as the season came to an end and they approached the end of the pay, silence fell. The fate of their entire season was sealed inside the metal innards of the beast, which was about to go silent. It felt strange to stroll to the gold room for the last cleanup. Tension and eagerness were in the air. This weigh-in wasn't your typical weekly one. It was the decision. Many thanks, dude. Thank you. I agree, friend. However, it's incredible how much we accomplished this year. Very crazy, Dad. Let's hope we reach that 7,000. You never know. It will be close. You people succeeded, though. The whole team assembled outside the little safe building, men and women who had poured their heart and sweat into the cold ground. They had fulfilled their obligation. They had no choice but to wait now. In reality, these times are characterized by a special fusion of terror and hope. Parker and Chris, his gold room specialist, went to work inside the gold room. The hefty matting were gently removed from the sal boxes. They were filled with black sand and, ideally, a significant amount of gold that had been aged. After a thorough cleaning, the concentrate was fed beneath the shaker table. A bright, thick yellow streak of pure gold started to split from the dark sand as the table vibrated. The gold was heavy and coarse, the ideal combination for quickly adding weight, and it was a lovely sight. After drying, the gold was transferred to a stainless steel pan. The mound of Yukon riches was stunning. The first container was taken to the digital scale by Parker. Outside, the team pressed up against the window, causing the glass to fog up with their breath. The red numbers on the monitor started to rise as he scooped the gold onto the scale. 120, 140, 170, 80, and 40. The group erupted in a silent cheer. He had already exceeded the 174 required to reach his 7,000 season objective. It continued to rise even though the initial pressure was off. 200, 240, and 260. At last, the scale leveled out. We have 300. A roar even broke out, but there was more. He filled a second, bigger container with gold. 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. After flickering, the last figure held 254.350, making the week's total 554.350. More than $1.1 million. The season's largest cleanup was this one. The season total, however, was the actual figure that really counted. Parker looked at his computer. Once more, the crew became silent. He entered the figures. Our total for the season is 7,381.1. Oh, you'll be shocked. The number merely dangled in midair. 7,381.10. It was valued little less than $15 million at the current market price. They had accomplished it in one grueling make or break season. They had recouped the whole amount of his enormous investment. Not only had the gamble paid off, it had been an unprecedented home run, not just a paycheck. There was so much more to the ensuing celebration than just money. It was about shared triumph, survival, and vindication. Parker held up a bottle of champagne in a moment of unadulterated admiration and emotion. He poured some out onto the Yukon ground, though, before anyone drank. This is to those that helped you get started. Those that helped you along the way, but aren't here to share, he stated. an unambiguous and sincere homage to his late grandfather, John Schnabel, who taught him everything. You believe that they are a match made in heaven, after noticing their similarities and shared vision. The job that one grandfather played is one that I kind of enjoy, because it can be both gratifying and irritating at times. The problem is that Parker went one step further. A surprise he had been preparing was revealed. He had commissioned custom-made solid gold tokens, using some of the initial gold they had extracted from Dominion Creek. He gave one to each and every one of his crew. The gesture was amazing. In actuality, Parker was providing them with a physical memento of their triumph to grasp in their hands, allowing them to partake in the actual results of their labor. It served as a reminder that this was not just his success, but also theirs. The crew was overburdened. Thank you for finding us a home. That one word, home, went a long way to express what everyone was feeling. They were no longer merely young people looking for a job after making this assertion. For years to come, they had guaranteed their future. There was a space for them. Looking at his colleagues, Parker said in an emotional voice that the risk had been worthwhile. We have an unreal project with an unreal group of people, he stated. We're in a great position going forward. When the cameras stop filming, a season this significant doesn't end. It turns into a myth. It keeps fans talking and debating throughout the winter. How exactly Parker accomplished such an amazing feat is what really raises a lot of doubts. The sandbagging theory is among the most widely accepted fan hypotheses. The premise is that Parker knew a lot more than he revealed, even with the on-screen tension. Supporters say he had a very good picture of Dominion's wealth because of his intensive geological testing and drilling. They contend that although the danger existed, it was much more planned than depicted. And the drama of the wager was amplified for television. Was he a professional poker player with a royal flush, or was he really risking everything? In fact, there is some excellent drilling in this area. There are also a number of awful ones. We just need to be spot on, because you lose money if you place the pit in the wrong place on this type of ground. The grandfather's ghost theory is another, more sentimental theory. According to this theory, Parker is greatly motivated by his grandfather John Schnabel's legacy. They interpret his work ethic and his toast as evidence that he senses a guiding force. These supporters saw the Dominion's success as more than just a commercial triumph. Parker was honoring the man who started him on his road and living out his destiny. Then there is the theory of calculated risk. Fans who perceive Parker as more than just a gold miner have come up with this concept. He is regarded by them as a bright young businessman. These supporters think he didn't just risk with the $15 million she invested. It was a well-thought-out decision supported by data, facts, and a thorough awareness of his crew's advantages. They believe that Parker's decision was not influenced by pressure or emotion. Rather, they claim he examined the market and the statistics, and he knew exactly how much gold his crew could extract. They see Parker as a CEO who knows when to make a risky move. Part of the show is the boisterous, self-assured Parker we see on TV. They assume he's thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else behind the scenes. Parker didn't just dig in the dirt, in their opinion. It was a wise business decision. And he differs from other miners because of that. He is intelligent in addition to being rough. Every action is prearranged. All risks are quantified. Parker is playing a bigger game than anyone else in the Klondike, according to supporters of this hypothesis. You must consider all of Parker's years of arduous work in order to truly see why his spectacular victory at Dominion Creek was so remarkable. It wasn't pure serendipity that brought him such success. He felt as though he was ascending a massive mountain, and he eventually made it to the top this season. Only his previous victories made this huge victory, with its staggering numbers and terrifying risks possible. Every triumph was similar to a lesson he learned at school that improved him as a miner. His story may be broken down into a few main milestones, each of which was a significant victory that prepared him for the next. This is dedicated to individuals who assist you in getting started, and those that support you during your journey, but aren't available to share. Let's get rid of that one. Salutations. Let's toast. Salutations. When he was still a teenager, he took the first significant step. He needed to demonstrate his independence. He was employed at the time by his grandfather, John Schnabel, a legendary figure in the gold mining industry. Although Parker gained a lot of knowledge, he felt as though he was living in his grandfather's shadow. He wanted to prove to everyone that he was capable of being a successful miner on his own. He therefore made a really courageous decision. He went out to lease his own plot of land after leaving the family mine. The risk was enormous. In addition to losing money, he would feel as though he had let everyone down if he failed. Despite the strain, he persisted. He discovered more than 1,000 ounces of gold by the end of that first season by himself. This was very important. It demonstrated to him and his grandfather that he had a unique knack for discovering gold. After demonstrating his ability to mine gold, Parker's next significant step was to demonstrate his potential as the best. Todd Hoffman, a miner, was his main opponent in the early days of the TV show. Todd was energetic and older, yet he frequently struggled to obtain quality gold. Parker, however, was youthful, intelligent, and really committed to doing things correctly. It was similar to watching two teams compete for the trophy each season. Parker and Todd were both well known in the Klondike for a few years. They all had their own fan bases, crews, and aspirations to become famous. However, everything changed after one season. Parker not only performed admirably, but he dominated the field. He discovered about 3,300 ounces of gold that year. Todd's team was unable to obtain that amount. This was a significant time. Gold wasn't the only factor. Respect was at issue. People began to view Parker differently. He was no longer only a bright youngster. He was the new king of the Klondike, the leader, and the man to beat. Parker's victory that season demonstrated his ability to manage a team, cope with stress, and maintain concentration under duress. He was no longer the underdog after that. The top dog was him. What then, do you believe encourages fans to return season after season? You have a very limited amount of time, and it's a really demanding profession. We essentially have 4 months to earn as much money as possible during a season. Additionally, everyone in the gold mining industry was aware that it's an extremely demanding industry, with little margin for error. Parker's next move after ascending to the throne was to construct his empire. He carried out this action at Scribner Creek, the location of his next large mine. He would be mining there for many years, so this was unique. He was able to develop and construct a considerably larger and more effective organization as a result. At this point, he transitioned from a little child to a shrewd CEO. He built a technique that was incredibly effective at extracting gold from the earth, hired a larger team, and purchased more machinery. He demonstrated that his success wasn't a coincidence by having fantastic seasons year after year. He discovered more than 6,200 ounces of gold in Scribner Creek one year. He made a lot of money throughout this extended period of prosperity. More significantly, it equipped him with the information and self-assurance he needed to face his greatest challenge. We returned to Dominion Creek at the end of that process. To achieve here, this was the ultimate challenge. Everything he had previously learnt was necessary. He needed the bravery he displayed when he walked out alone for the first time as a teenager. He required the spirit of competition that drove him to win the title of greatest miner on the show. Additionally, he required the CEO savvy he acquired while establishing his dominion at Scribner Creek. However, the risk was much higher this time. His wager was $15 million. He might lose everything he had fought so hard to achieve if he failed. He didn't fail, though. He exceeded his target and discovered more than 7,300 ounces of gold, valued at around $15 million. In a single season, he essentially paid for his whole wager. Parker Schnabel won everything by taking a risk. But was it shrewd editing or real bravery? Please share your thoughts, hit the like button, and subscribe for more.